So on our mirror project right here, we're going to have to start making some interior molding pieces, and these are what actually hold the glass from falling out. They're a thin piece and they're very small pieces. The actual pieces of trim are going to be 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, which is about this size in real life. So they're very small pieces, and they require us to have a bigger piece to route, and then we're going to rip those off of our actual board to make those small 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch pieces, since the 1/2 by 1/2 is too small to route. But we're going to go over how to do this. Since these pieces of trim, and I happen to have an example right here, this is a rough blank right here. If we take a look at the detail, can you see that in the video there? Since it's such a very small piece, this is going to be from this outside edge here to over here is going to be 1/2 inch. Since it's such a small piece, we want to make sure that we have a very clean, knot-free board. We would not want to route through something like this, as the trim piece would snap once we get it off. So, looking at this board over here, if I was to cut a piece off of this here, I have a knot. I don't really want to do that. I could cut this board, and I could take another section out of that, but I'm not going to do that right now. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this board around, because it just so happens that this particular piece over here is nice and knot-free. Now, it calls for one piece at 26 inches long by 2 inches wide, and one piece at 20 inches long by 2 inches wide, re-sawn down to 1/2 inch. So what we're going to do is, rather than cutting some 26s and some 20s, we're going to cut them both at 26 inches. That way, if we accidentally cut something maybe a little bit too short, we could reuse that later for a 20. So we're going to just do 2 26s. I happen to have a stop set up out here for our 26-inch piece. For good measure, we'd always want to bring this over, keep it tight to our back, and take off just a smidgen to make sure this is very close to square. We have our stop already set up at 26 inches. I just have to carefully bring it down to here. Make my cut. I like to let the saw come to a complete stop before I lift it up. You see how the board was pinched a smidgen? The next thing that we're going to do on this particular piece right here is we're going to joint our prettiest side, because that'll take the least amount of times. And generally speaking, we like to joint the side that's crowned up a little bit, and that happens to be this side right here, and it is our prettier side. So we'll come over here, keep it nice and tight against our back. Probably going to take us 2 times, but maybe we'll get lucky and get it in 1. Definitely didn't get it in the first one, still didn't get it in the second one. Third time's the charm, nice and trued up edge. So what we're going to do after this step here is we're going to be able to get 3 2-inch wide pieces out of this, and we're going to go ahead and rip that down with the table saw. Back here over at the table saw, we're getting ready to go ahead and take some 2-inch strips out of this. So I have the table saw over here set up at 2 inches. We have our jointed side right here that we're going to put against the fence. We're going to make sure that we're 1/8 to 1/4 above, which we are. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to run this down through 3 times to get the pieces. Turn on the dust collector for me. All right, and I can tell that we just don't have quite enough on this one right here, which is plenty fine. We'll be able to get one out of this one later on. We'll wind up taking this down when we do it. So the next step that we want to do is we want to resaw this thing down to 1/2 of an inch. And this is a little bit tricky of a situation, but if we go into it with a plan, we'll be in great shape. I know that I'm unable to get this kerf guard here within 1/2 of an inch of this. I'm going to go ahead and remove this. Grab my other kerf. And we're going to want to have this blade set at a height that's higher than this by about 1/8 of an inch. Looks pretty good right there. And we want to have this distance in between here and here at 1/2 of an inch. Now, what we want to do is we want to pick out our prettiest side, and we're going to put that against the fence. This particular board right here, I like this side. The other thing that I would definitely want to make sure is when I put a board to go through here, if this board right here has a bow to it, which will be in this way here, we want to have the bow so that the bow is like this. Reason being, if the bow is going outside like this, we're not going to be able to maintain this right here. With the bow going like this, the bow will be able to maintain the 1/2 of an inch down through here and come out. Now granted, it's not that big of a gap, but I just wanted to explain it. So in order for us to have an advantage on this right here, I like to use some feather boards. I'll put these right here. I'm going to preload it. This will allow us to keep it tight against our fence without having to have our hands there. And we're going to put one, that'll be all right. We really don't want one back here because we're going to be cut off as we come through. Now, when we run this piece down through here, I'm definitely going to have to use a push stick, and this push stick is going to wind up having a small groove in it as we go through here because we physically need to run it over the saw as we go through. We are going to want to maintain pressure down. We don't want to move this down, but we are going to maintain pressure down, and we're going to try to push it right on down through like so. I'm going to explain that here right now. Definitely don't want it touching our blade. All the way through. We'll take note how we had to cut through that in order to achieve it. Let that stop. Take a look. We wound up with a very beautiful piece. We didn't wind up having any burn from the saw. We're in great shape. It's nice and uniform the whole way through. It's a little bit more visually scary than it is actually scary. The nice part about this particular machine, since it is a saw stop, that if our fingers were to touch the blade, it will trip. We always want to practice like we preach. We always want to say we always keep our hands nice and far away. Remember that the left hand should never really move going down through here. The right hand's the one that just goes the entire way through. We follow right through with that right hand, keeping it up, out, and away. We don't ever drag this back through as it could get snagged and run like this. So after we do a couple of these here, we're going to go over how to route this bad boy down on the router and resaw it down again. So we're back here working on our side moldings for our mirror. We've already successfully cut our blanks at 26 inches. we went ahead and ripped them down to 2 inches, and we've resawn them to 1/2 of an inch. So now what we're going to do is we're going to run these through the router over here so that we can make our trim pieces, and then the last step that we'll do is we'll wind up ripping them to 1/2 of an inch later. The reason why we're doing this is because the little 1/2 by 1/2 inch pieces would be way too small to run down through here, so we're going to run them at 1/2 inch by 2 inches down through, and it'll be in great shape. So it calls for our shoulders to be the same measurement here and here. We've kind of run a few through our first test piece. Tried it here, it wasn't good. We tried it here, it wasn't good. We tried a third time down here, and it wound up being 1/2 and 1/2. I'm sorry, 1/8 and 1/8, smidge under 1/8 and 1/8. So we're feeling pretty positive. We were able to run another one down through, and we had a little bit of issues with maintaining these correct distances. But in some spots they were good, in some spots they're not. We're going to try these ones here and run them down through and see how they look. So the first thing we're going to do is, these particular pieces, this side, this side, this side, and this side, these are all my resawn sides. You can tell there's a little bit of blade marks here and there. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark an X and an X on the sides of the boards. The reason for this is when we go to put them in our project later on, you'll notice that we put the X's towards the same side of our project. That way if there's any discrepancy with our route, at least the X's will be facing the same way, so the discrepancies would be off by, minimal amounts. So we're going to put the X's up, and we have them on both sides. I happen to have a featherboard set up here. This will help hold it down and prevent it from kicking back. We take a look and see how the featherboard keeps pressure on it. We'll definitely make sure that we have our push stick ready to go. That would be nice and easy for us, so we'll have it nice and handy. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll have a helper pass it to me as we get really close to this here. Hold that for me. And we're going to go ahead and give it a shot here. Take a look at it again, and looks like I want to go a smidge deeper on this route. This side here is pretty good, but my shoulder down here is not too nice looking. We want these to be the same. We're going to double check it on this side, and if it's off by a little bit, we'll just go ahead and we're going to raise that height of that bit a smidgen. Just showing the same thing, so we're gonna raise the height by just a little bit and double check it. Give this a real quick whirl. Looking a little bit better, but we still want to go a smidge more deeper. That's looking super, super, super close. If I was to measure it, I'm looking at a little bit underneath, a little bit underneath. I might be able to go a smidge, just a smidge more deeper. That's looking really, really, really nice. I'm satisfied with those results. We'll be able to go ahead now and run the rest of our pieces through. And next time we cut into this video, we're going to show you guys how to go ahead and rip the actual trim pieces off of this. The final part of this interior molding that we're working on here is going to be to rip these down to our final 1/2 inch wide pieces. And in order to do that, we're going to have to use the table saw over here. And we're going to be cutting it pretty close since it's only 1/2 inch. You can see we're going to be working really close, and these are the most challenging part of, I should say they're the most challenging pieces of this project to do. This step right here is challenging, but when we go to cut these down and install them, that's also going to be challenging. It's just the most challenging pieces of the project to work on. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to run these down through here and get 2 1/2 inch pieces off of this. I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. We're going to keep our hands out of the red zone right here. We are going to keep it down, and we're going to wind up pushing it down through here. I do have a very skinny push stick that will be able to slide down through here when we do this. I don't want to use a bigger push stick where I could possibly get and hit this, so we have a nice little small one right here to do it. So make sure you got your glasses on. Looks like we're good. Height-wise looks pretty good. I think we're ready to go. Flip it around, put our molding rounded side over here. Now, as you can see, my hand was very close to this over here to hold it at the very end right there. When we do this step, what I will wind up doing is I will be standing off to the side here, and I will be helping you hold this piece against the edge right here with a small scrap piece so that your hands wouldn't be in this area. But I did want to demonstrate how to do that. This particular piece that I ran down through here, this is probably going to be a scrap piece for somebody. This dimension right here should be the same as this over here, and we can tell that it's not, which isn't the end of the world, but what makes this piece here not desirable is that it's thicker down here than it is down here, and that's because this particular board has got a boat to it and a cup to it and a crown to it. It's a nasty piece of wood. And when we went over here and we tried to run it through our table saw 2 steps before this for the resaw, the board had such a bad bow in it that I believe it's not true to the 1/2 inch the whole way. But it worked good for this demonstration here. That's the last step of this, and then we'll wind up going ahead and cutting these down and installing them here later on in a new video.